Grip socks are great, and now they're even better with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Better fit, moisture wicking, amazing comfort, and all the extra grip you need. Choose from 10 different colors for just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
If you really know your football boots, then you'll know that Japan gets a bunch of exclusive models that we don't. However, inside this box, I have a Japanese release that you can now get in limited quantities, and they're really good. Ladies and gentlemen, the Puma King Mirai, a King alternative to the Platinum 21 model that the rest of the world gets, a pair of football boots that I am personally not a big fan of, which unlike those, features kangaroo leather through the forefoot and toe box area, speed mesh through the midfoot to keep the bulk down, a central lacing system with a standalone tongue for that traditional fit and feel, and a hard ground sole plate and stud pattern that we typically don't see. The overall build quality I think is actually really impressive. However, there is a catch. If you buy a pair that's been imported into Europe, they're going to run you about $250, which is quite expensive, especially considering that all of the other top-end Puma models are going to run you about $200. They're still great football boots, don't get me wrong. There's a lot about them that I like that we're going to go over in this video, but I ultimately want to conclude whether or not these are worth the $250 price tag over options that are a little bit more, a little bit less, or depending on what you want to compare them to, boots that are significantly cheaper. So if you're interested in learning more, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, get them before they're gone by checking out the first link down below. And if you guys enjoy seeing reviews of boots that you might not have even heard of before, drop a like on the video and make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2022. Now, for those that regularly watch the channel, you probably heard Japan and football boots in the same sentence and automatically assumed that these were also made in Japan, but that is not the case. They're made in Vietnam, like many of the other top-end Puma football boots. However, it's a Japanese model that they're now distributing to a couple different European retailers in limited quantities, I'm assuming as somewhat of a limited release, or perhaps a little bit of a tester, kind of feeling out the market to see if there's any kind of demand for an alternative Puma King model to kind of run alongside the King Platinum 21. Obviously, the $250 retail price is not going to help its case. It's technically the most expensive Puma football boot that you can buy in Europe or North America for that matter. However, what you're getting for the money, I think, is 10 times better than what's currently on offer from the King Platinum 21, which quite frankly is a pair of football boots that I can't really recommend to anybody. Unlike the Platinums, you do get actual kangaroo leather here on the King Mirai, where granted, it is just in the forefoot and toe box area. For me, a Puma King model should at the very least have some leather through part of the midfoot, but that's not actually the case here. However, the leather that you do get, I think, is really soft. It's not super thin like we see from so many leather football boots these days, so you get that plush kind of padded feel on the ball, and then that transitions into a speed mesh material, which is a mesh-based textile synthetic with a polyurethane top layer that's really, really flexible, but has the necessary structure to it with the laces tied tight. That gives this a little bit more of a speed boot vibe versus kind of a classic Puma King feel that I think a lot of people automatically associate with anything bearing the Puma King name. I would actually say that this reminds me a lot of some of the low-cut Puma 1 leather models that we got probably back in like 2019 or so. Also football boots that I really liked. This is kind of a more simplified variation of that, and honestly, aesthetically, feel, comfort, fit, there's not much about these that I don't like. Adding to the simplicity of this design is a nice deep central lacing system allowing for the upper to expand when putting the boots on, making putting these on and taking them off significantly easier than all these other football boots with one-piece enclosures. I also really like the option of that additional lace hole at the top, allowing you to grab a little bit deeper, kind of at the front part of your ankle to really lock your heel in place if that's something that you're finding an issue with, depending on how they fit your feet. Personally, I didn't feel a need to use that, but I do like that they give you the option. And the tongue itself is also made from leather, something that I'm a really big fan of, with a thin memory foam backing through the majority of the tongue just to help cut down on any kind of lace bite or any discomfort from the laces pressing against the top of your foot. To me, it just makes for a really comfortable and soft feel in general. And again, I appreciate the refreshingly simple design that they've introduced here. You get a low-cut construction, an internal plastic heel counter. The heel lining material is this really soft microfiber with what feels like a decent amount of padding, but admittedly when the boots are on, I personally wish they would have added a little bit more, but it's not to the point where they're uncomfortable, and heel lockdown in general is not something that I had any issues with. And then the insole is fully removable, and the same you're going to find on most of their top end models, and then it has their nano grip lining material, which kind of has this soft, almost silicone-like texture to it that grips your socks really nicely, and then it's made from a single layer of black foam. Which brings us to the base of this football boot, where we are technically getting something that would normally be exclusive to Asian markets in general, and that is a hard ground sole plate and stud pattern. Puma is getting better about offering their multi-ground layout, but this is kind of the middle ground between multi-ground and their FG AG stud patterns, and that you can see it still looks kind of like an FG stud pattern. The studs are a little bit shorter than what you'll find from all of those options, where again, it's targeted towards hard ground, meaning that the ground is harder. You don't need the studs to dig in quite as much. And also for that reason, the surface area of the stud tips is significantly larger, just to more evenly distribute that pressure across the bottom of your foot. You'll also notice 4 studs along the side of the forefoot rather than 3, 2 support studs in the middle rather than 1, and then again, fairly large heel studs with a good amount of surface area to distribute that pressure. The sole plate plastic itself is a little bit thicker than what you're normally going to find from an FG stud pattern, which again, just kind of adds to the overall comfort, especially long term once the material starts to break down. And the flexibility of the sole plate I think is really nice. It feels very traditional in a lot of ways, but I think fitting for what they've done with the upper. As far as this being usable on firm natural grass, it absolutely is. These studs are still at an FG length in my opinion, and as long as the ground isn't super soft and really, really deep, you shouldn't have any issues with traction whatsoever. It's definitely less aggressive than the FG AG stud patterns that are available to the rest of the world, but as far as being a usable FG stud pattern, it just kind of falls on the more traditional side of things, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. Which brings us to the weight, where I thought it'd be fun to compare their Puma King to our Puma King in the Platinum 21, a pair of football boots that I simply do not like and do not recommend. I just think they're kind of bad in general. Nonetheless, in a size 9.5 US, both on a scale, we'll start off with the King Platinum 21. You can see that they weigh in at 8.6 ounces, the equivalent of 243 grams. Remember those numbers. And we'll throw on the King Mirai, and you can see that they weigh in at a significantly lighter 7.45 ounces, the equivalent of 211 grams, which is a very noticeable amount of weight, to the point where these are quite light and these are relatively mediocre for a pair of top-end football boots in 2022. On feet, and perhaps unsurprisingly because of the simple design, these boots feel great. They're refreshingly simple and super easy to put on and take off, something that I really appreciate in a pair of modern day football boots when everything has a one-piece upper and a lot have mid-cut designs as well. The central lacing system allows for plenty of adjustability, and while I would love for there to be more leather on the upper, I also like the fact that the speed mesh material with the laces tied tight gives you this nice structured sensation without squeezing your feet uncomfortably, or at least gives you a little bit more lockdown and responsiveness than you otherwise would have if the entire upper was made from leather. Speaking of leather, the kangaroo leather through the forefoot and toe box area is really soft. It's got a nice amount of padding to it and moves nicely with your foot. Of course, as you wear them in, it's also going to stretch and form to the exact shape of your foot, making them even more comfortable. I do wish there was a little bit more padding in the heel, but it's not to the point where they're uncomfortable in any way. That's more of a personal preference thing than anything. As far as width is concerned, they have plenty of width to them, pretty much all throughout the foot. A little bit snug through the toe box area, but again, they're leather and going to stretch over time. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, I can very strongly recommend the Puma King Mirai. There really isn't much about them that I dislike. I wish there was a little bit more leather on the upper, but even as they are, I think it's a really well executed, simple pair of football boots, which is something that is becoming harder and harder to find these days, and the kangaroo leather that you do get does admittedly feel really good. At $250, I think they're a little bit pricey for what you get, but when you also factor in that this is a relatively uncommon pair of football boots to have outside of Japanese markets, if you can justify the price tag, you are getting something that is pretty unique, and you're very unlikely to find any other players out there wearing the same boots as you. With that said, if you're not really as concerned with having unique football boots and you just want the best ones for the money you're about to spend, if you're justifying $250 for these, personally, I would spend the extra $30 and buy a pair of made in Japan Mizuno Morelia 2s. They are better leather football boots in just about every way, and for an extra $30, I think that's worth it. And then on the flip side of things, if you like this idea, but $250 seems a little steep, for $230, the Nike Tiempo Legend 9 Elite would also be another pair of football boots that I would probably pick over these. And then if you really like this concept, but just don't have the budget for it, the New Balance 442 version 2 Pro at $130 is effectively the exact same concept at less than almost half the price. In other words, they're really cool football boots and they're really good football boots, but I'm not sure they're justified at $250.